15 years ago, I transitioned over to eating a fully plant-based diet. And I remember exactly what working out felt like prior to that. And it was quite different than my current experience. And I'm going to tell you about 3 different ways that eating this way has really helped me have a lot of success in my fitness journey over this last year. And at the same time, it has made it a lot easier for me. Hi, I'm Stacy. Thanks so much for popping in. I hope you enjoy this video. Now, sadly, talking about plant-based eating can oftentimes be controversial or sort of a hot button topic for some people. So let me just start with this. It is not my intention with this video to compare eating fully plant-based to any other diet out there except the standard American diet. And we all know what that one is, don't we? That's of course the one with a lot of really highly processed foods and fried foods and very little fruits and vegetables and lots of really high fat type dairy stuff like cheese and creams and things like that. And trust me when I say I am not judging here, because up until 15 years ago, that is exactly how I ate. So for the majority of my life. And it's really the only other frame of reference I have as opposed to how I eat now. And as I alluded to in the intro, there really is a noticeable difference in how my body feels now compared to how it felt before I made that diet change. So let me tell you about the 3 big ways that this has helped me in terms of my fitness journey. The first way it has helped me is just by the fact that it gives me so much energy. When I switched my diet over the course of 2 to 3 months, 15 years ago, the first thing I honestly noticed was how much more energy I had. And that has really made things a lot easier for me in the fitness department because it helps me stay consistent, right? I'm not dragging my butt around all day or having lots of energy crashes and then having to figure out, where to get the energy to work out. So by the fact that I just have a lot more energy to begin with just because of how I eat is super helpful. It makes it a lot easier to not only be consistent in my workouts, but to be able to go harder and to get more out of them. So that has been great. But wait, what about protein? I am sure you may be wondering that, right? And trust me, I am going to get to that. So be sure and stick with me, and I will get into that after I go over a couple more things. So the second way that eating plant-based has helped me with my fitness is that I don't have, because of the way I eat, I don't have a lot of systemic inflammation, a lot of inflammation in my body. Now, there's a lot of things that can cause inflammation in our body, but certain kinds of foods definitely can contribute to that. Fried foods like fried oils and that sort of thing, excessive amounts of sugar or excessive amounts of flour, and just various other things. So by eating mostly whole plant foods, not only am I eating foods that are not inflammatory for most people in most cases, but many of them are anti-inflammatory. So so between that combination, I'm not adding a lot of inflammation to my body just from diet. And like I said, there's a lot of factors that can go into inflammation. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but there's something to be said for eating anti-inflammatory foods. For sure. They are helpful. So that's been great. And what that does, again, it enables me to be consistent with my workouts because I'm not so sore and stiff that I'm just like, how am I even going to do this? You know what I mean? And also, just eating the way I do, my body bounces back faster. I have better recovery. And so as long as I get a good night's sleep, then the next day I'm raring to go again, which is great. And I do get a couple rest days in there. I take at least 2 rest days, usually 2 rest days in a week, and work out 5 days a week, sometimes 4, depending on what's happening in life. But so that, that has been really, really helpful. And the third way that eating fully plant-based has helped me out in all of this is it's made weight management easier. And, it's because, again, I'm focusing on mostly whole plant foods. I'm not going to act like I never eat any junk or I never eat anything that's, kind of more highly processed, because there is some of that. It's just a very minimal part of my diet. So by focusing on mostly whole plant foods, those foods don't tend to have a lot of fat in them. And so that's helpful when one is trying to either keep from gaining weight or wanting to lose weight. Now, I do eat a certain amount of healthy fats, of course, and I'll get more into that in a little bit. The other thing I do is I try to make sure I don't load my food down with like a lot of oil and things, because that's really fattening, right? So I try to keep my whole plant foods that are naturally low fat, I try to keep them low fat for the most part. And the big thing is, you know, fiber, the only place you can find fiber is in plants. And so since I eat just all plants, I eat a lot of fiber. And fiber's good for helping with weight management because it's satiating, right? It makes you feel full longer. And so that's helped me a lot, because then I'm not getting, you know, hungry between meals and that sort of thing. That's not to say I don't have some little snacks here or there, I do. But I don't have, they're just little tiny ones, because I'm not really eating them out of hunger per se, more just like I just want a little bit of a snack. So, but yeah, so anyways, that getting all that fiber in has been incredibly helpful in helping me, you know, with weight management. Now, I will say this though, and I think that this is important to understand. And for a long time, I didn't understand what was going on. But when I first started eating fully plant-based, I was probably about 44 years old. And for about the first handful of years, I just ate whatever I wanted. My weight didn't really change. You know, I was at a weight I was happy with, a healthy weight. And so I was one of those lucky people that could pretty much just eat whatever I wanted, and I was fine in terms of the weight situation. So I was very lucky, and I knew I was lucky, and I appreciated every second of it, trust me. But then as I got into my late 40s, right around 50, and going from perimenopause into menopause, that few years where all that was happening, I started to gradually, without changing anything about my diet, I started to gradually put on weight, you know, maybe a pound or something, a pound or two every, you know, few months or whatever. But it was slow, but it crept up to the point where I ended up, you know, after several years being, you know, whatever, 15, 20 pounds heavier than I wanted to be. I was still not technically overweight, but I was close. I mean, I was definitely, you know, had more weight on me than what I wanted to have. And so I know now why that is. I did not know at the time, but basically what it is, as our hormones change and we have a lot less estrogen in our body, basically our body cannot deal with glucose quite as efficiently as it once could. And so we're not as insulin sensitive. So basically, if we're eating a lot of carbohydrates, and you know, carbohydrates break down into glucose in the body, and if our body's not utilizing it as efficiently as it once did, then we have to adjust things a little bit, because otherwise, if you're left with excess glucose in the blood, and the insulin can't find homes for it in your muscles and your liver and wherever it needs to put it, usually in your brain, and there's excess left over, it has to get rid of it. It can't leave it in the blood. So basically it converts it into lipids, and it basically stores it away as fat. So there you go. So we have to eat a lot of healthy complex carbohydrates. I'm not talking about the junky ones again, but we have to, I think we have to adjust that. We have to adjust our macros. At least I had to. I can't speak for anybody else, but my understanding is that this is a common problem when women get to a certain place in life. And so what I did at that point, once I learned about that, is that I went from probably eating, I would guess I was probably at about 60% carbs, 20% protein, 20% fat, like on average. That's what it was before. So I've adjusted that pretty drastically to where now I'm more like my daily, you know, intake of food, my calories it's roughly around like 40% carbohydrates and 30% protein and 30% healthy fats. So, and sometimes not so healthy fats, but mostly healthy fats. And so anyways, that adjustment has helped me a lot. And so, so that is something to be aware of, and that's whether you eat plant-based or you don't eat plant-based, like the same rules apply. So that's something, you know, to look into more if you're not aware of that, and learn a bit more about that type of thing, because I think that could really help. So next I'm going to talk about protein, but before I get into that, two things. Number one, if you're enjoying this video, and I hope you are, I would love it if you would hit that like button down below and let me know that you like it, let YouTube know that you like it, and if you want to see more content around natural holistic self-care for women over 50, be sure and hit the subscribe button too. All right, the second thing is that I'm really only telling you here about 3 benefits that I've experienced with regards to changing my diet and how it's affected my success with strength training. But the reality is there's so many benefits you get when you just get a whole lot more plants onto your plate every day, regardless of whatever else you're eating, you know? And so if you want to hear somebody talk about that from a different perspective than me, I would encourage you to watch this video from my friend Annalise Schmidt. And she's been a registered nurse for 36 years, but she has seen it all, as you can imagine. And so she speaks about it from a very different place, in a very non-judgmental, non-preachy sort of way. But if you're interested in learning a little bit more about maybe the benefits to just getting more plants into your life every day, I would say check out her video. And also her channel is very cool. It is about Nordic inspired simple living. So if you have an interest in that, be sure and take a look at her channel. Okay, so now let's talk about the elephant in the room, shall we? Protein. So there are a lot of people out there still that think that you cannot possibly put a lot of muscle on your body if you eat nothing but plants. You can. You can. And how do I know? I know for a lot of reasons. Number one, I can lift 2 to 3 times the weight that I could lift when I first started strength training a year ago. There's only one reason for that, and that is because I've put a lot more muscle on my body. Secondly, I can just see it in the mirror, especially as I'm losing fat, gaining muscle, but I can most certainly see it, and I'm not the only one. I've had many family members mention it to me as well. And I easily get about 110 grams of protein per day. That's kind of my typical. Now, I am working to try to get more in there. I do have a few diet restrictions that make it a little more challenging for me than for somebody who doesn't have that. I have a condition called histamine intolerance, and so there are certain high protein plant foods like tempeh and like some of the yogurts and stuff that would be really great if I could eat those and not feel crappy afterwards, but it doesn't work that well for me right now. And the way that breaks down for me, and I'm going to say this because people ask me this in the comments, but it's roughly, if I break down my day, it's about 30 grams of protein at breakfast, around 20 or so at lunch, about 40 or so at dinner time, and because I do eat a couple little snacks during the day, so if I combine those, that's probably about 25 roughly. So that's where I'm getting up to, you know, give or take a little bit, right around 110 every day. And my diet, it changes day to day, obviously, but you know how we all get our certain meals and things that we kind of just rotate through a lot. And so if I ever do start, you know, so I have a pretty good handle on the breakdown because I have checked it in like my FitnessPal app. But anyway, if I ever do eat drastically different, sometimes then I'll start to crunch the numbers again just to sort of see where I'm at and if I need to adjust anything. But I don't track it day to day or anything like that. Some of my favorite, like really high protein plant foods, you know, all the plant foods have some degree of protein in them, some amount of protein, but the ones that are really high that I like the most, and there are many that are out there that I don't have on my list, but I love pistachios. I eat some of those every day. Peanut butter, oh my goodness, I'm such a fan. Of course, I love beans and lentils. I love eating things with tofu in it. I know tofu has like literally no flavor at all, but you know, it sucks up the flavor of whatever you're cooking it with, and it's great for texture and stuff. I drink unsweetened soy milk. I enjoy that. Lentil pasta is one of my favorites. There's a few high protein pastas out there, and so I do eat lentil pasta a couple times a week usually. Hummus, oh my God, I could put hummus on literally everything except breakfast. That would be gross. But yeah, so I eat hummus a lot, and also things like hemp hearts, and just these are some of the things I eat like a lot. There's a lot of other foods out there too, but those are, I have these ramen noodles that are delicious, that are high protein ramen noodles. Yeah, so anyways, just to give you an idea, some of the things that I like to eat. And I get asked this one a lot too. I do have a protein shake every day, as do most people who do strength training. The one I opted for it's a pea protein. It's made from peas. It does not taste like peas. Thank goodness. I like peas, but I don't want my protein powder tasting like peas. But anyway, it's a really clean product. I searched around a lot, and it is a little more pricey than some of the others. But if I was going to eat it every day, I want to make sure it's as clean as possible, right? So the company is called Ritual. I will drop a link below to the protein powder that I get. And it's delicious. It's powdery, it's not gritty, it's not too sweet, just kind of a little sweet, but not too much. It's really, really yummy. So I do include that in that. I make it with soy milk. I put my creatine powder in there so I can't taste it. And I put a little bit of hemp hearts in there, and I put it in a little blender. And that gives me like 30 grams of protein right there. So that's a big, that's very helpful too. And honestly, I knew it was possible to put muscle on, to put a lot of muscle on one's body, even before I went down the road of strength training and stuff, because I have followed documentaries and followed vegan bodybuilders, and I have no intention of being a bodybuilder. I definitely want to build muscle. I'm not interested in being a bodybuilder personally, but I'm fascinated by some of that kind of stuff, just fitness in general and people doing it different ways. And there are vegan bodybuilders that have been incredibly successful professionally and did not take steroids. That's the thing, is people say, oh, they took drugs, and and maybe some of them have, but I know there's a few that I've seen that absolutely not. And so, and they're huge. They're huge. And plus, some of the biggest animals in the world are plant-based animals, like hippopotamus and many others, apes. I mean, these are massive, huge, strong animals. So I knew that was, was not a thing to worry about or to even think about. But I will link down below to one of my favorite, I would say my favorite vegan bodybuilder. He's not doing it professionally anymore, but he did for years. And his name is Nimai Delgado, and he's just such a cool guy and such a good dude, and he's does a lot of stuff on Instagram. So I'll link to his Instagram down below in case you're interested to take a look at what he's up to. But yeah, so I knew even before I ever, started strength training myself, that I had no worries about whether I would be able to put like the, muscle on my body. And I will say, those people that do strength, that do professional bodybuilding, they eat way more food and therefore way more protein than me or anybody who's not doing that sort of a thing. And that's important for them. But anyway, it's interesting. And if you'd like me to make a video where I take you through my day and just kind of like take you along with me while I make my meals and show you what I do on a typical day, I'm happy to do that. Just drop me a comment down below, and if I get enough people that are interested in that, then I will put that video together pretty soon. And lastly, I would just say, if you're someone who has been having a hard time getting started or sticking with workouts basically on a regular basis, either because you're just really, you're tired all the time and it's hard to find the energy, or maybe you're sore and stiff and it's hard to get motivated for that reason, I would just say maybe toy with the idea of sort of rearranging your meals a little bit, not getting rid of the things you eat, but just sort of making them plant-centric, sort of, basically loading up lots of plants and then doing whatever else you do in addition to, but maybe not making it the focus. So instead of, if it's meat or fish, instead of having this huge piece of meat or fish and just a little side of veggies, like flip that, right? And try that for a week or two and see how you feel. If you're just loading up on plants. And now, be aware, because they're full of fiber, and if you don't eat a lot of fiber, you could start to get a little, it takes your body a little time to adjust when we start eating in a new way, right? To like digest. So don't get too crazy with it, too fast. But I would just say over the course of a month, like gradually work up to, just more and more and more plants, and having then whatever else you have. But yeah, I would say definitely try that and see how you feel after a couple weeks. I think it would really help in a lot of ways, and certainly with the energy, and perhaps even with the, you know, with the inflammation. But you know, inflammation is a complicated thing. It can take longer to see that sort of sort itself out. But you know, what have you got to lose, right? It might just be the sort of the answer you were looking for, possibly. So that is all for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. YouTube seems to think you're going to like this one too. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a good day, and I will see you in the next video.